seminars. Previously we've heard from Martin Ball, who, if you recall, if you were here a few weeks ago, talked about the government's construction strategy and the role of BIM within that strategy. 2 weeks ago we heard from Adam Clemens, who talked about the concept of the intelligent client. And today, the third in the series is Rob Garvey, who's going to pose the question, low carbon, is it a price worth paying? Now, just before I hand over to Rob, I just want to say a very quick couple of words. The image you see here of the open door is really a very appropriate image for what we're trying to promote with the BECi initiative. The initiative really only started a few months ago, certainly less than a year ago, and it has grown out of the enthusiasm, particularly of Rob and Martin and Adam, and the recognition that we can't simply wait for the impact of radical changes that are taking place in the construction industry and then respond to them. We have to be part of that process of change and be proactive in the change. So the initiative was set up specifically to promote ideas of collaboration and integration within and amongst all of the parties involved in the construction industry. It has got the active support of our new Dean, David Durney, and heads of department, Jane Wright's also here, and we are working closely across the university. So we're working with the Department of Architecture, Peter Silver's here today, and also with the school's business development officer, Sue Tufflebury, and the team have been getting out there and speaking to people in the industry, literally dozens of people from all sides of the industry, excuse me, clients, project managers, architects, QSs, contractors, and the message is resonating with them. It's really striking a chord. The idea of collaboration and integration is gaining momentum within the industry. And we really do want to be part of that. But the idea of the open door is that we need contributions from everyone. We're not a closed shop. We want to encourage active participation in this initiative across the school and indeed across the university. So we would extend an invitation to other staff in the school, other staff in the university, for students to get involved, to get your employers involved, and to really make a difference, because we really are very, very committed to this idea of collaboration and integration, and we want to make it successful. So Rob today is going to talk to you around the concept of sustainability, which is clearly a major issue for the construction industry, and as such it's a major issue for us, and he's going to look at how some of the provisions of the government's construction strategy will address those issues. So that's you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for that, Tony. I'm just going to run through what is low carbon, have a look at what that means and why we need low carbon construction, and then bring that back to actually understand what's happening in construction. I think what Tony's just talked around and what we're talking around in collaboration and integration, this potentially gives us a focal point of which to collaborate and integrate around. So just moving on, the title of this 2020 series is all around the implications of the government's construction strategy. So let's start there. The government's construction strategy was written in May 2011, and in terms of the low carbon part, we actually have to take a step back. We have to take a step back to October 2010, when the innovation and growth team that were responsible for developing a report in response to the low carbon initiatives that the government are pushing forward. They needed to look at how the low carbon construction would deal with that. That report came out in October 2010. It's a small document, it's only 230 pages long, okay? It's got 55 recommendations, and I've not read it. But one of the key things out of it is that one of the aspects was that the government needed to have a clearer direction over what it was doing, okay? okay? Not just around low carbon, but also around construction. And hence, the government construction strategy was actually born. In that sense, the government construction strategy is a much shorter document. It's only 43 pages long, but 16 pages of which are the key strategic objectives. The last one of which is the one that relates to low carbon construction. As you can see here, it says to be published in June 2011, so it was in advance of its time because there was another document that was about to be produced, which was the action plan relating to the previous document. So, key symmetry through all those documents was that they were coordinated and written or chaired by the government's construction advisor, Paul Morrell. So if we come back to this report, key thing around this to identify is, as Tony said, it's around sustainability. So why carbon? Why focus on carbon? Well, the general principle here and a key theme around it is that sustainability is actually too broad a concept to get your head around. It's too difficult to grasp. Therefore, if we can concentrate on carbon, it's something that we can measure, it's something that we can actually develop plans around. And that's what was done. So looking at the report, well, it's a report that was in response to the UK commitment to reduce carbon and other greenhouse gas emissions. It is now a legal obligation, and we'll touch on that shortly. But the key purpose of the document was very much around understanding how the construction industry and whether it was fit for purpose to move to the transition towards a low carbon economy. In terms of what that actually means for, it says construction companies, but I think we can, broaden that out to say built environment, businesses, etc., is that there are three things that they can actually do. First is they can decarbonise their own businesses, with fit and decarbonise their businesses. Similarly, they can assist building owners in becoming more energy efficient. And thirdly, a key thing that we actually will do anyway, is actually provide the infrastructure for the country, but in this instance, provide the infrastructure for the supply of clean energy, and actually enable and push sustainable practices to other areas of the economy. However, whilst that's a focus around construction, this is a much bigger issue, and it's a global issue. And that starts with the United Nations and the Convention for Climate Change, which, if we go back even further, started with the Earth Summit in 1992. There was an acknowledgement that what was happening in the Earth's climate and its adverse effects were common and a common concern to all countries, and it would affect all of us. To that end, they pulled together a convention with the key objective being the stabilisation of greenhouse gases and concentrations in the atmosphere. Underneath that, there's some of the outcomes that they're looking for. But what we're driving for is how do we actually live in a more sustainable manner. Now, all that is actually encapsulated in the Kyoto Protocol. Okay, so it took 5 years for all the countries to come together and agree the Kyoto Protocol, and now that has been signed and ratified by 191 countries, so the majority of countries in the world. The key exclusion being the United States. They've signed it, they haven't ratified it. There's an annual convention, but last year was the 20th anniversary since the original Earth Summit. They went back to Rio, and we will come back to an aspect of that shortly. What have the UK done in response to this and the Kyoto Protocol? Well, they created the Department of Energy and Climate Change. It's at the forefront of a lot of what the government are doing, and that is underpinned by legislation. So this is where it comes from when I say that it's a legal obligation for us. It's all encapsulated in the Climate Change Act of 2008, where it embodies the commitment to reduce the emission of all our greenhouse gases by 80% by 2050. Okay, let's just look at a little bit of science, not too much, but CO2. Okay, what do we mean? Why is it significant? And being a numbers person, I'm going to throw some numbers at you and show you where we're measuring and how we're measuring. But why is it significant? Well, we've touched on this in terms of it is the chief greenhouse gas out there. There are 8, 8 or so greenhouse gases out there, but this is the predominant one. It results from human activity. And most scientists will say that it is the key contributor to global warming and climate change. Somebody measures this, okay? This is CO2, and as this sort of shows, we started measuring it in the late 50s. This is the trend, okay, which is upwards. So we are putting more CO2 into the atmosphere. This line here, this 350, is what scientists say is the safe level of CO2 in the atmosphere. The key point here is that we were breaking through that 350 barrier in the late 80s. Okay? Hence there was a lot of concern about this, and countries got together, and a few years later we had the Earth Summit in 1992, recognising that this was an issue that needed to be addressed. But as you can see, it continues to increase. What does that mean? Well, scientists say that there's a tipping point beyond which, when it goes beyond that, it won't be reversible. If we can stop producing CO2 now, we can reverse that trend. Okay? If it goes beyond the tipping point, then potentially it's irreversible. And that tipping point is perceived to be at 450 parts per million. Which, going back to the 1992 level, if we continued on at that trend, we would reach it by 2050, hence the commitment to reduce carbon emissions by 80% by 2050. So is this a price worth paying? Well, I know my kids like programs and penguins and stuff like that, and I'm sure we should all be concerned for it. However, I'm just going to throw a different angle and a different argument here, and bring in a touch of economics. Steve Grunberg's not here, which is a shame. I just wanted to show him I do know a little bit of economics, but the straightforward supply and demand model. So let's have a look at this in terms of where we are, etc. And if we look at demand, well, in terms of energy, we've got growing demands. The population of the world, this is the world population growth, has grown exponentially, and we can see that through these numbers here. Last year we broke through the 7 billion people on this planet. And it's predicted to be that by 2050 we'll have another 50% of the population. So there is a continuous and growing demand for energy usage. Just through people, but we are putting more and more demands on that with the people we've got here already. In terms of supply, going back to one of the things that Paul Morrell sort of clearly highlights when he's talking about this, when he started in business in the 70s and stuff like that, nobody was giving a thought to the fact that all these fuels and all the resources of the earth would run out. Okay? And I'm not saying when they're going to run out, but the point is that actually, whether they're going to run out in 38 years' time, or 50 years, or 100 years' time, the supply of oil and the supply of gas will at some point run out. Okay? Just going. This is a graph of oil prices, and it shows this is the trend of the world oil price based on 2010 prices in dollars. So it runs at an average of about $25 a barrel. A couple of years ago it was going up to $160 a barrel, and at the moment it's just under $100 a barrel. So, coming back to my simple supply and demand model, you can see that this is actually happening. We've got increasing demand, we've got decreasing supply, and it's no surprise that the price is going up. What does that mean? What does that lead to? Well, I mentioned the Department of Energy and Climate Change. Well, they keep these statistics on fuel poverty. As you can see here, we've got approximately 5 million households in the UK that are in fuel poverty. This is from this week's news. It's headline news, energy, etc., and energy prices. And here it's saying we're on the brink of an energy crisis. Okay, these are fuel prices. It's just going to get worse, is the bottom line, and generally means, and behind all the arguments, that we need to be more energy efficient. Okay. So we've looked at some science, we've looked at some economic stuff, and sort of this is bringing us through to the triple bottom line. a focus that a lot of people are considering that we need to have. I'm not going to sort of dwell on the social aspects or anything like that, but it's recognised that that's a model that we need to consider. What I want to do is sort of move on is just have a look at what's happening in industry. And to do that, I've had a look at a company. Okay, these are the International Green Awards, and what I want to do is have a look at Interface. Okay, Interface are actually a supplier to the construction industry of carpet tiles predominantly, and their story is actually written up in this book by Ray Anderson, who's recognised as being one of the leading advocates around environmental business. Now, the story of Ray is well written in this book, and I would recommend anybody to read it, not least because I think it's one of the best commercial management books out there as well. But in terms of running his business, he was doing well. About 20 odd years ago, like any business, he was having to bid for the work, and one of his business development managers came to him and said, "We've got this PPQ, pre-qualification questionnaire that we need to complete. They don't just want our environmental policy, they want us to prove that what we say in our environmental policy is what we're doing, and I'm not sure we can actually do that." It made him sit and think, and he started talking to a few people, and somebody recommended he actually have a look at this book, The Ecology of Commerce. Again, I'd recommend anybody to read that. What it did to Ray, he said it was like, so this is a traditional business person. He's been making money, he's been doing very well out of it, doing very successful out of it. It's like a spear to his heart to say, actually, we've not been doing things properly. Okay, we need to do things differently. And he's developed within that a different model for the way that he wants to run his business. And he set objectives and targets to move that forward, of which has won him awards in doing so. He encapsulates that in his MAP sustainability policy, and that policy is really around how to actually drive Interface to be zero carbon by 2020. Now, he set that target about 8 years ago, so they had 18 years to do it, and they've been doing pretty well across the piece, and there's plenty of information available about the progress they're making. But if we actually look at that, there are 3 key areas that they're making in that progress, principally around carbon footprint reduction, product innovation, and actually the changing of the culture within the organisation. So if we look at the footprint, well, they're moving towards 100% renewable energy. Key for me really is, and as I say about commercial management, this is the key thing with the government's construction strategy. It's around eliminating waste and avoiding unnecessary cost. It's one of the key parts of what he's actually done and set up. In terms of product innovation, it's how do you use the recycled products? The biomimicry, it's bringing scientists to actually understand how you can replicate what happens out in nature and stuff like that. And he's brought these products into the company, and they have very quickly become bestsellers because the industry and clients actually recognise that what's good for them is good for the planet as well. Which leads on to what's actually happened. Well, they've increased turnover, they've increased profitability, they've won a few awards, and they've enhanced their reputation. But what I just want to touch on is just some of Ray's views on sustainability. Okay? Firstly, and predominantly I've sort of touched on this, we can't continue to rely on oil, we have to change our ways. To which end, he has the following laws of sustainability. Simply that nothing actually goes away, it just disperses. Moreover, everything's connected, and we need to consider that. Which sort of brings him into the economy. His view of the economy at the moment is that we just take it, we make it, and then we throw it away. And actually we've got to be a lot more connected in the way that we look at that and integrate it. Moreover, that the cost economy and the focus on cost accounting ignores many of the externalities that you should be taking into account. And if we were to do that, then some of the issues that are mentioned would be addressed. However, the key point that he really wants to get across here is that done right, sustainability doesn't actually cost, it pays. He's proved. Okay, so So let's just bring that back to construction. What's actually happening? We've said that there is an action plan, and that action plan is being monitored by the Green Construction Board. They have the collective responsibility for leading the change towards a low carbon economy. This is their map. They've got a website. This is where they're moving. So what the key objectives here? Well, it is about reducing carbon, but it is also reducing cost. These are the sort of 6 key areas, and I sort of focus on this one here. The reduced use of resources, lower embodied carbon and capital costs, operating costs, lower operational costs and running costs, and improved solutions. They are sort of the key benefits that have been derived from organisations like Interface, and they're the key objectives that have been put down for the government's construction strategy. Similarly, they recognise that there's the opportunity to increase the UK competitive advantage. How are they doing that? Well, again, they've got these things which, again, are not dissimilar to what aligns within the government's construction strategy. And that sort of comes back, and we're all moving forward, and we're looking at government soft plans and how we actually make sure that the buildings we have are delivering the outcomes that are needed. Now, there's loads of terms around this, and I'm just going to sort of touch on those, whether it's reducing carbon, zero carbon. There's plenty of people out there that are pushing a similar message. But in terms of what's happening within construction, well, we've just had the Green Deal finally pushed forward by the government and announced a short while ago. There's plenty of work that's been moved forward in terms of halving the waste to landfill, and many contractors have benefited from having a focus on that. There are a number of organisations out there supporting contractors, etc. in that vein. Loads of research into how we get more sustainable homes and businesses, passive house, etc. As well as quite a bit of work around understanding how we do like the whole life cycle costing and bring that back. Ultimately moving towards more energy efficient. It's now a requirement for properties to actually have an energy efficiency label, and you are even seeing it in the property press now, where some estate agents are actually stating the energy efficiency rating in most houses, which don't get above D. Okay? So it shows that the industry has something to go on. Okay, let's just touch on academia. I want to come back to the Rio 20 plus 20 event last year, and there is actually a higher education sustainability initiative. I did find I've corrected a spelling mistake in it because initiative was spelled wrong, but we'll leave that. Okay. The key aim here is that what they're looking at is every university, higher educational establishment declare and try and move forward on these 5 concepts. Okay. Teaching sustainable development, getting research into sustainable development, actually breeding our own campuses, supporting sustainability efforts, and sharing those results with international framework. So that's out there. I did look to see whether we've signed up to it, and I couldn't see anything. So, maybe we need to look at that, but we'll come back to that. But it's not just us. It's not just the SAFE that needs to be. This is a university-wide issue as well. And we do actually have some leading expertise in the university pushing eco-cities, and Professor Simon Jost is pushing forward on that front. So there is stuff going on in the university as we speak. I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to just say anything more about the Marylebone site and whether it's greened our campus anymore. It's certainly done some benefits that way, but we'll come back to that if needed. I do just want to touch on EcoBuild, spreading the message. EcoBuild's in a couple of weeks. I encourage everybody to go. It's free. Okay? There's a lot going on. There's a whole conference stream, and we've got 3 streams here. So making sustainable construction happen, beyond construction and design, architecture and sustainability. So there's a whole thick conferences going on, as well as seminars. The purpose here is to have a look at the one on the 7th of March, Refurbishing Britain, and we are actually getting out there. So our very own Colin Gleeson, who can't be here today, is presenting on retrofitting the performance gap. How big is it? So we are doing something, we are spreading the message, which is good. Okay. So let me just sum up. Okay. Low carbon, is it a price worth paying? Well, I've sort of tried to run through some of the principles that it's a triple bottom line here. We need to look at this, we need to have some sort of focus on it. I think the principle is very much around it's not so much the price, it's understanding costs. Okay? It's trying to get down to the right level to understand how we can drive and eliminate waste and avoid unnecessary costs. There's a lot happening out there, and the answers aren't readily available all the time. We've got to do some work, and we've got to do the research around it. But it's happening. We have to make sure that we're staying on board with that. And I think there are plenty of people out there that are driving forward on a number of these issues. At the end of the day, the supply chain might be developing and trying to promote some of the solutions. It comes back to the clients and making sure that the clients understand whether it's a price worth paying as well. On that note, I'll leave you to decide, okay? And I'll wrap up and say thank you very much for listening, and I'll take any questions.
You touched the green construction board.
Yes.
Could you just explain a bit more what they do and what it is?
Okay, the Green Construction Board has been created. It's run by the CEO of Skanska, and he has a number of fellow people from across industry that are driving the strategy or implementing the action plan. There is something coming out in a few weeks' time. I showed that big map. They're actually putting a route map to actually achieving all of those sort of things, and hopefully with that there will be resources, etc., that we can use and see how to push that forward. Okay, but yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Could I ask, sorry, what do we stand as the development in Dubai, such as sustainable city? Where do we stand globally as a nation in competition of technology sorts of things?
I should say that I stand here not as an expert in sustainability. I stand here as somebody that's got an interest in it and being able to answer where the UK stand. Globally, I'm not too sure. There is a slide there. This is came out a couple of days ago, as you can see, and that's sort of indicating that our emission of greenhouse gases is going down. Okay, so this is a release and data from the Department of Energy and Climate Change. I can't say where we sit globally, but we are certainly seen as one of the countries that is certainly pushing this more than any other. Okay, Peter.
Well, those key, I think, gentleman's question, this green construction board, those 6 key objectives.
Yeah.
Again, I just wonder, it's quite useful because in the School of Architecture and Built Environment, there are only so much we can do. It seems to me there's a couple of things that are appropriate for us, if you like, particularly, which is the low embodied carbon and the operational cost. Would that be how you would see it as sort of as a quantity scale construction management?
I think you know there is a lot of discussion at the moment, and again the construction strategy is pushing on this, not to just focus on capital cost. There is too much emphasis on capital cost and insufficient focus on the operational cost. And again, if I just okay, so you know this is a diagram from Constructing Excellence, which is very much looking at the front end sort of construction costs, the operational and maintenance costs being significantly higher than the initial costs. And if we start focusing on this, we'll see that actually there's a lot more benefit of focusing on trying to reduce those costs, okay, and not just the construction costs. Similarly, if we then start understanding what the business costs are, the people costs, and make the connection between, as we've got space out here, is sort of, you know, we've improved the environment without doubt. The outcome of that is that hopefully we've got a much better space for students to learn in. You know, the outcomes for the students hopefully is something that moves forward. If we focus on these aspects, then maybe that gives us an opportunity to understand how we can influence these type of things. And it might mean actually increasing some of these, you know, for the benefit of the longer term. That's a bigger challenge.
Yeah, Rob, as you may know, I work with Colin on the retrofit side.
Sure.
To answer the question about sustainable cities, the thing that got me interested is that 99% of buildings exist and the replacement rate is tiny. So actually, a lot of the new cities, even though I teach it, is probably not relevant.
Sure.
The thing that we're interested in, the problem is the simple economics doesn't work because there's a great deal of uncertainty about what energy costs are going to be.
Sure.
So my question would be, is there data that you're building up on the construction cost side that, you know, maybe we could draw on in future research?
That's a good question. My dissertation student doing life cycle costing is down in front. He might be a better person to answer. I won't put him on the spot like that. But he's grateful. I think this whole issue around life cycle costs and that information, there isn't sufficient data out there. There might be within certain organisations, but there needs to be a lot more focus. But similarly, it doesn't go down to the granularity that we potentially need, and I know what Colin's looking at to drive some of that. So it's certainly an area where we can improve.
I mean, just without wanting to sort of turn it into a sort of political discussion,
Sure.
the government was elected claiming to be the greenest government in history, and their flagship policy was the Green Deal. Do you think that's going to have an impact?
It's taken them a long time to get it out there. They want to get it out there. Again, I'm not going to stand here and profess to be an expert in the Green Deal. I think there's a lot that we can do to try and understand it in more detail. The bottom line is, you know, if you've got 5 million households in fuel poverty, where's their motivation to think, oh right, I'm going to invest, right? When you're asking them to take on debt, and motivation is something that I don't think they can even comprehend. Okay, so they're the people in most need of it. Okay, and I cannot understand how they would do that. You know, similarly, you know, in property, you're the landlord. Okay, it's in your interest to, or you're the one who's potentially going to stump up the money to invest in it, but the tenant is the one that's going to reap the benefit. So you've got a disconnect between the investor and the benefit. So work needs to be done around that to try and sort of connect those sort of dots together. And I think, you know, until we do that, until we get some sort of focus on those sorts of things, then no, it's not going to work. I think the bottom line is, it's not, the initiative is right, it's just how you actually implement it. And I think there's significant challenges. I mean, my limited green credentials are the fact that I do actually live in a reasonably green house, and I know, having looked at some of the figures, that if you can improve the sustainability of your own house, you do reduce your energy costs. You know, and my gas consumption is significantly lower because it's so well insulated in comparison to a house that is, and therefore costs significantly.
Rob, can I just add to that? If anyone is interested in that relationship with landlords and tenants,
Okay.
really a key area that is coming up all the time.
I think that's partly one of the calls that I'd say here. I think we're all doing bits around sustainability. Tony, when he does his talk in a few weeks' time, we'll be looking at education. And the challenge here is that we've sometimes become too modularised and we don't actually take a bigger picture view. And this is an area where maybe we need to have a common understanding and thread with the way through all modules. And put on it what everybody's doing. I know I'm doing stuff, I know we've just created a life cycle costing module within construction. You know, what's the benefit of that? How does that actually help Tony and Colin
questions?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the government, the problem is what is low carbon construction? Is there a definition in there, and hasn't it changed over time?
I think it's bringing back to the initiatives. It's recognising it isn't just. It's about recognising you want to become more efficient. It's about looking at trying to eliminate waste. It isn't just reducing waste of materials and stuff like that. It's actually doing a lot of the stuff that when we're talking about collaboration and integration, looking at lean practices and all those sorts of things. It's the big picture of how do you become more efficient at what we do, and that's certainly an area that we're pushing within the initiative with BECi.
Yeah, one of my concerns is who's monitoring it to actually say it's been achieved. It's very good saying yes, we're going to go for it, but who actually, in planning, that's a major concern. Put policies on, but nobody actually goes there and checks that it's been built to that standard. Apart from buildings,
Because no governments are in power for long enough to be able to do that. There's no continuation of monitoring from one forward cycle to the next.
For local authorities, they have right to pass. It's a difference.
It's hard to keep it going. I mean, in architecture, we talk about life, the life of it all the time. What is the right life? So if you're trying to assess, sorry to interrupt.
That's fine.
It's interesting. If we're trying to assess the initial carbon footprint of the construction industry, it's going to depend on whether are you making a building for 5 years, 100, 1,000? Where are those decisions going to be made? I think it's a
Yeah.
I think
we have
just
those discussions as well.
Just to add to that, I mean, I think it's also interesting that the energy efficiency requirements are effectively enforced through the building regulations, but then you go to the Code for Sustainable Homes, which is really enforced through development control. So there's again another slight sort of disconnect between the planning system and the building control system, and yet it's if you're aiming for, say, level 5 under the Code for Sustainable Homes, which is quite high, and yet there is no direct building control enforcement to ensure that happens. It's a planning thing. So you're right. There is a sort of a lack of joined up thinking there.
I would bring that back to actually clients understanding what they want, okay, and trying to give them that focus on those sort of things, and actually maybe demanding it a little bit more in that. But how we actually do that, our building out there is potentially evident of some of that. It might be, we might put it down as ideals, but they're ideals rather than something that actually necessarily gets followed through, and that's where we need to be a little bit more joined up. I think this is part of it, it's about problem solving. I think the example of interface is, there's a clear direction, there's a clear vision of what they want to do. If you focus people with a common agenda and come together to solve the problems, then you come up with the right solution.
There was a question at the back.
Yeah.
Like,
My business is in public procurement. I don't know now the target in 2015 in the UK. Is it backed by a voluntary instrument or a legal instrument? You said that yes, we have to recognize it.
sorry, I didn't quite catch what the essence of your question was.
I think there is a target for carbon emission reduction.
Yeah.
20% to 80%.
Yes.
Now, is it backed by law or is it just a voluntary instrument?
No, it's backed by law. It's our commitment to do it. And the way that the government is pushing forward is actually they're very much looking to go way beyond that objective. Okay, so it is a legal requirement. But I think that comes back to exactly what Robin's saying. How do we know we're doing it? And that's down to all of us, to come together and actually focus on it. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to bring this to a close if that's okay, unless anybody's got any other burning questions.
Just one about Green Deal, really.
Okay.
At the moment, the sort of the pressures, if you like, are quite neutral because people could expect to generate savings, which would pay for the investment in the improvement. And that's a sort of it's not pushing one way or the other. Do you see some sort of change to that balance needed to actually push people over that tipping point?
It's a challenging one. I mean, it's why are they going to make that investment? And I come back to my example in my own personal circumstances in the construction that I was involved in. You know, I was the budget holder, and the easiest things for me to take out were the things that were going to save me money in the long run, because you know they were capital cost things, and if I didn't have the money, I couldn't afford to do it. But to a certain extent, it was down to me to actually say, right, yeah, I believe this is what we need to do, so we will find the money to do it. And I think that's the challenge, getting people to actually understand that it's worthwhile their long-term investment. Monica?
I just wanted to respond to that, and I think if we look at the way in which the system was first structured, it was supposed to be a carrot and stick. The carrot has been very much removed, but the stick remains. And if we follow the example of the commercial buildings that under the new legislation they won't be able to be sold or let after 2018 unless the EPC improves to above F, the indications are that the same thing may happen in residential property. And that's what's going to answer everybody's question as to why do we want an EPC if you know that we're going to buy a Victorian property that is here everywhere. So it's a question of enforcing it through taxation and punitive measures.
Okay, I am conscious of time, so I do want to just bring this to a conclusion now. I'm just going to highlight two things. This is a new building. It's the Crystal Down Dockland. So if you go to EcoBuild, then take half an hour out to pop around and have a look at this. It's right next to the cable car, so you can have a ride on that as well. However, this is all focused around sustainable development. It has a fantastic educational benefit to it. It's all structured around how to actually deliver sustainable development, and it is a building that's been generated on all the principles of that. It's free as well. You can see I cost person, I like free things. Okay. I also just want to bring your attention to the construction news. This is something that we've got set up this week. We've got a free trial for the next 6 weeks to access their website. We're quite keen to monitor your use of it and whether you think it's beneficial. It's a paid-for subscription. If you don't use it and you don't think it's worthwhile, then we're not going to spend the money to subscribe to it. Okay? So the information is there on the undergraduate construction website. We do get access to the AJ as well. So if the architects want information to this, then we can provide that as well. But please sign up, have a look at it, and tell us whether you think it's worthwhile.
Subscribe today.
We don't subscribe. No, you don't pay, James. Not yet. We'll come to this later. If it's worth it. It's a test of whether it's worth it. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, just to